So in this tutorial we're going to look at patterns in Creo, and in order to use the pattern tool you have to have already created some solid geometry in order to work with the tool. So what I've done here is just created a simple flat plate just based on a rectangular sketch that I've created. I've put a chamfer feature on one of the edges that you can see here, and I've just created this circular extruded boss to create this cylindrical shape in one corner. And if you want to replicate how I've dimensioned this boss, you can see that it's referenced to the edges of the plate. So I've put this horizontal dimension to this vertical edge of the plate, and I've put this vertical dimension up to the horizontal edge of the plate. And I've also obviously dimensioned the diameter of this boss as well, and then just created an extrude feature from it. So yeah, if you just create a rough approximation of this plate and then you can follow along with the tutorial. So what we're going to do first is just select one of the features, and in this case we're going to pattern this boss feature, this cylindrical boss. So I'm going to select that first, and then maybe you notice there that the pattern tool became active before you select a feature. So I've just deselected the boss there. The pattern feature is not available. You have to have pre-selected a feature that you want to pattern, and then the pattern tool becomes available. So if we open the pattern tool, you can see straight away that the feature that we had selected, all of the dimensions that are governing the size and shape and position of that feature become visible. So you can see the dimensions that I've put in away from these two edges of the plate. You can see the diameter of the thing, and you can see the depth that I extruded it by. And what we've been prompted to do up here is select an item, and the items that I'm going to select are going to define how this boss feature is copied using the pattern tool. So the first dimension that I'm going to select is this 30mm one. So this is essentially the horizontal position of the boss. So I'm going to select that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Dimensions tab here. And what it's interesting to note is that because I've selected this dimension that's defining where the boss is, that dimension's gone into our Direction 1 entry box here. So you can see as I hover over it, the dimensions highlighting in the graphics window. And then if we have a look at the next column, you can see that 30 has been entered there, and that's just because the initial value of this dimension is 30. But what this means is that the pattern feature is going to make copies of our boss at 30mm intervals in this direction. So basically all it's going to do is it's going to create a copy of this boss, and it's going to add 30 onto this dimension. So the first one would be at 60mm away from this edge, and then the next one would be at 90, and then the one after that would be at 120, and so on and so on and so on. And that's just because it takes its spacing from whatever the initial value of that dimension is. So let's say we wanted to accept that. We could do. And as I click out of the spacing box then, just click back up to this box here, you can see that a spot's appeared. And what that's showing us is it's showing us the center point. If we look from above, it's showing us the center point of the original boss, and it's also showing us where the copy will be placed. So this will be the center point of the copy. So we could OK that, and there you go. We now have a pattern with two pattern members. And if we look at the pattern feature in the model tree over here, our two pattern members now reside inside the pattern feature. So there's our original, and there's the copy that's been made of it. So there's two of them. Now let's say that we wanted more copies of this part. If we go back into the pattern feature, so I'm right clicking here and go in edit definition, we can simply add more pattern members here. If we type in 10 into this box, you can instantly see that the preview is showing us additional pattern members there, and we know that the spacing between the center point of each one of these is 30 mil. So let's go back in and edit definition again. So we have 10 pattern members. If we open up dimension there, we can see that the spacing is 30 mil. Let's say we wanted less space between each one. We could enter 20 in there, and you can see that the preview updated there and all these points got closer together. So now we have 20 mil space in between them. So we're building up the complexity of what we can do with this type of pattern. Let's go edit definition again. Let's say, as well as making copies and varying this dimension, let's say we also wanted to vary this dimension as well, so this 40. So that's the vertical position of our original boss. The way that we would do that is we can click here, this is direction 2, so we click in this entry box, we can select this dimension just as we did before with the 30. This prompt box is asking us what spacing we would like in this direction. Let's say we're not happy with the default, which is 40. Let's say that we want a quite large spacing on this. Let's say we'll go up to 80 mil between each copy. So you can see that the preview is now updated. It's showing us a second row here, just like the first row, but offset by 80 mil further down. But let's say we need more copies in this direction. We can enter a higher instance count here, so we're on 2 at the moment. We can put 3 copies in there and OK that. So you can see that this sort of pattern, which is the dimension pattern, allows you to create grids with regular spacing. It allows you to create different spacing in the horizontal and vertical. So it's quite a useful pattern for regular spaced holes with regular increments. But there is a slightly different pattern that allows you to do a similar thing in here, which we'll also look at in this particular tutorial, and you can access that by opening up this drop down box here. You can either do it to modify an existing pattern, or if you just come in here to create a new pattern, you could go straight away into this option as well. So it's the direction pattern. We're getting a warning here saying we're going to lose all the data that we've already entered in this pattern, but we're happy with that. That's okay. So what we're going to do with this pattern is we're going to select a direction for the pattern. So very similar to the other one, but rather than picking a dimension from the original part, we're going to select a direction reference. And in this case, we're going to pick an edge on the plate. And you can see as soon as I pick an edge, I get a preview of what this pattern's going to do. It looks like it's going to create copies at a set distance again, which I can enter a distance in here. In this particular instance, it looks like it's picked the wrong direction to pattern in. It looks like it's going to send these bosses off the end of the plate and pattern them out into empty space here. So let's change that. We can do that with the direction reverse here. So there you go. And again, we've gone beyond the end of the plate, so let's say we needed a smaller distance between these copies. There you go. So we can OK that. Quite similar to the dimension pattern. And again, if we go back in, we could select a second direction reference here. So maybe we wanted to replicate what we did in the other one, and you can see as soon as I select this edge here, it's making 3 copies of the original row there. So it's making 3 copies, and it's got whatever spacing I want to type in this box here. But we can sort of go beyond the the capabilities of the dimension pattern that we were looking at before. If we now remove this edge as a reference, so I'm clicking in the second entry box here, right clicking and then clicking on remove, you can see that's now been removed as a reference. We could conceivably click on this diagonal edge over here, and you can see from the preview what's happening there. It's using that as the second direction instead, and again it's by default it's picked the wrong direction here, so I'm just going to flip the direction of that using this icon, and you can see what can be achieved using other references. So there we've used this 45-degree edge as our second direction reference, so we get this nice interspaced pattern instead.